They told me I only have 45 seconds up here, which is 45 seconds more than the Senate gave John Bolton this week.
Brad Pitt's voice blends Hollywood flair with sharp critique, from Oscar's musings to Fauci satire. His words provoke reflection on art, power, and truth. Let's explore his resonance in a world seeking clarity. Brad Pitt's moment at the 2020 Oscars, where he clinched Best Supporting Actor for Asterisk, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood Asterisk, became more than a victory lap. It turned into a cultural flashpoint with a single, deft jab. His acceptance speech, delivered with his signature charm, took a swift detour from gratitude into a pointed political dig, spotlighting the Senate's refusal to hear from John Bolton during Trump's impeachment trial. The line landed like a well-timed punch, drawing gasps and applause in equal measure, as Pitt used his 45-second window to not just celebrate but to critique. It was a masterstroke of brevity, leveraging the Oscars' global stage, watched by millions, to highlight a moment of national contention. The impeachment, a raw nerve in early 2020, had divided public discourse, and Pitt's quip tapped into that tension, framing the Senate's decision as a snub to accountability. His tone, light yet cutting, masked the weight of the critique in humor, making it digestible yet impossible to ignore. By tying his allotted time to Bolton's silent testimony, Pitt didn't just poke at the GOP, he hinted at a wider frustration with power-dodging scrutiny. The Oscars, a night of glamour, became a platform for subtle dissent, and Pitt wielded it with finesse, knowing the headline would amplify his words far beyond the Dolby Theater. His pivot to praise Quentin Tarantino and Leonardo DiCaprio softened the sting, but the political barb lingered, a reminder of Hollywood's fraught dance with Washington. For some, it was a bold stand. For others, a smug overreach. Either way, it cemented Pitt as more than an actor that night, but an unafraid voice to stir the pot. The effect was instant, fueling debates about celebrity influence and the GOP's grip on narrative ripple, all sparked by a fleeting, razor-sharp aside.
I was really disappointed with this week. And I think when gamemanship trumps doing the right thing, it's a sad day, and I don't think we should let it slide. And I'm very serious about that.
Transitioning from his reflections on Hollywood's evolution, Pitt's later explanation for injecting politics into his acceptance speech added a layer of intent that deepened the impact of his Oscars moment. His frustration was palpable as he addressed a specific disappointment from the week prior, likely tied to the impeachment proceedings or the broader political atmosphere. This wasn't a casual aside, it was a deliberate choice to use his platform on one of the world's most watched stages to signal that silence wasn't an option. His insistence that we shouldn't let it slide carried a gravity that transcended the glitz of the event, hinting at a personal stake in the issues at hand. By framing it as something he was very serious about, Pitt positioned himself as more than a celebrity offering platitudes. He emerged as someone wrestling with the weight of the moment, both in his industry and the nation. The Oscars, already a nexus of culture and influence, became a conduit for him to challenge complacency, blending his cinematic musings with a call for accountability. This fusion of entertainment and conviction underscored why his words rippled outward, inviting interpretation as both a Hollywood critique and a subtle political stand.
And then you have Brad Pitt. I was never a big fan of his. He got up and said little wise guy statement. Little wise guy.
During a rally in Colorado Springs, President Donald Trump took aim at Brad Pitt, weaving a critique that blended personal disdain with a reaction to Pitt's actions on a high-profile stage. The root of Trump's ire seems to stem from Pitt's acceptance speech at the 2020 Oscars, where the actor, upon winning Best Supporting Actor for Asterisk Once Upon a Time in Hollywood Asterisk, made a pointed political jab. Pitt's comment referenced the Senate's refusal to allow John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, to testify during the impeachment trial, an event still fresh in the political ether at the time. Trump's response at the rally, labeling Pitt a little wise guy, suggests a mix of irritation and dismissal, framing the actor as someone overstepping his lane with a smug, unsolicited opinion. This wasn't just a casual swipe. It was a public rebuttal from a president who often tangled with Hollywood's elite, a group he frequently cast as out-of-touch adversaries. Trump's choice of words, "never a big fan," hints at a pre-existing animus, possibly fueled by Pitt's status as a liberal-leaning celebrity, an archetype Trump often clashed with during his tenure. The wise guy tag carries a loaded connotation, evoking a streetwise, almost mocking tone that implies Pitt was not just wrong but deliberately provocative. This aligns with Trump's broader rally rhetoric, where he relished skewering cultural figures who challenged him, rallying his base by painting such critics as elitists detached from real America. Pitt's Oscars moment, broadcast to millions, gave him a megaphone Trump couldn't ignore, especially since it touched on the impeachment, a sore spot that had dominated headlines and defined much of his first term's narrative. By calling Pitt out, Trump turned a personal slight into a performative counterpunch, reinforcing his image as a leader unafraid to spar with Tinseltown's biggest names. The rally context amplifies this dynamic. Trump's broader rant, railing against the Oscars for honoring *Parasite*, a South Korean film, over American classics like *Gone with the Wind*, reveals a nostalgic America First undercurrent that Pitt's comment inadvertently stepped into. Pitt's jab at the Senate, controlled by Trump's Republican allies, could be seen as a subtle alignment with the globalized, progressive ethos Trump often scorned, making him a convenient target. The crowd's boos, as noted, suggest Trump successfully tapped into their loyalty, flipping their admiration for Pitt into disdain by tying him to a political stance they rejected. Trump's offhand dismissal, "I don't know," further minimizes Pitt's critique, shrugging it off as irrelevant noise from a celebrity he deemed unworthy of serious rebuttal. Ultimately, Trump's blast at Pitt was less about the actor himself and more about flexing defiance against a cultural establishment he viewed as antagonistic, using Pitt as a punching bag to energize his supporters and settle a score.
We had a great meeting today with a lot of the great companies, and they're going to have vaccines, I think, relatively soon.
Relatively soon is an interesting phrase. Relative to the entire history of Earth, sure, the vaccine's gonna come real fast.
In the context of Brad Pitt's portrayal of Dr. Anthony Fauci addressing the public, his commentary on the timeline of a vaccine's arrival offers a sharp, satirical lens on how language can shape perception during a crisis. The phrase, "relatively soon," becomes a focal point, unpacked with a mix of humor and pointed critique that underscores the absurdity of vague assurances in the face of urgent need. Pitt's Fauci suggests that while a vaccine might indeed emerge swiftly when measured against the vast expanse of geological time, spanning billions of years from Earth's formation through epochs of tectonic shifts and evolutionary leaps, the human experience of waiting is far more immediate and unforgiving. This juxtaposition highlights a disconnect between grandiose promises and the tangible reality of a population grappling with uncertainty, where soon carries an expectation of days or weeks, not an abstract comparison to planetary history. The delivery, infused with dry wit, amplifies the subtext. What feels like progress to those in power can ring hollow to those counting on it. By framing the vaccine's development in such an exaggeratedly broad context, Pitt's Fauci subtly mocks the tendency to inflate optimism without grounding it in practical terms, a nod to the broader theme of deciphering muddled messaging. The humor lands as both a release and a reprimand, inviting the audience to question the reliability of such pronouncements. This moment, set against the backdrop of a chaotic public health narrative, reflects Pitt's ability to blend entertainment with commentary, using satire to peel back layers of confusion and expose the stakes of clarity. It's a clever pivot that resonates beyond the immediate context, tapping into a universal frustration with ambiguity when precision matters most.
Anybody that needs a test gets a test. They're there. They have the tests. And the tests are beautiful.
Okay, a couple of things. I don't know if I would describe the test as beautiful, unless your idea of beauty is having a cotton swab tickle your brain. Also, when he said everyone can get a test, what he meant was almost no one.
Brad Pitt dissects the rhetoric surrounding COVID-19 testing, wielding humor to expose the gap between official claims and lived reality. His quip about the test's beauty lands as a biting jab, conjuring the vivid, uncomfortable image of a nasal swab probing deep, an experience far removed from any conventional notion of elegance or appeal. Through this, Pitt's Fauci skewers the tendency to gloss over the gritty specifics of a medical procedure with lofty adjectives, suggesting a disconnect in how leaders present solutions versus how they're received by the public. The satire digs deeper as he pivots to reinterpret the promise of universal testing, dryly clarifying that everyone actually translates to almost no one. This twist serves as a sharp commentary on the hollowness of blanket assurances, hinting at a reality where access falls short of the bold proclamations trumpeted from podiums. Pitt's delivery, laced with a mix of incredulity and resignation, amplifies the critique, turning a policy misstep into a punchline that resonates with anyone who's felt the sting of unmet expectations. The humor doubles as a coping mechanism and a call-out, spotlighting the absurdity of inflated rhetoric in a time when trust hinges on tangible results. By channeling Fauci's voice through this lens, Pitt bridges entertainment and exasperation, offering a cathartic nod to the collective frustration of navigating a crisis where words often outpace action. It's a masterstroke of comedic timing that doesn't just entertain, but invites scrutiny of the disconnect between narrative and truth, all while keeping the tone light enough to pierce through the noise.
And is there a way we can do something like that by injection? Supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light.
I know I shouldn't be touching my face, but...
In Brad Pitt's satirical take, as Dr. Anthony Fauci, the fleeting admission of wanting to touch his face sets the stage for a broader unraveling of the absurdity swirling around public health discourse, especially when juxtaposed with Donald Trump's speculative musings about injecting disinfectants or blasting the body with powerful light. Pitt's Fauci embodies a weary, knowing presence, caught between his own human slip and the wild tangents of presidential improvisation. The face-touching confession becomes a microcosm of grounded reality, a scientist's quiet struggle with instinct, while Trump's leap into fantastical remedies amplifies the chaos Fauci must navigate. Pitt plays this with a deft mix of restraint and incredulity, letting the contrast speak volumes. One man wrestling with a mundane urge, the other veering into science fiction territory with unchecked confidence. Trump's suggestion of internal light or chemical injections, delivered with the casual bravado of a brainstorm, lands like a fever dream, far removed from the practicalities of medicine. Pitt's Fauci doesn't need to overact here. The absurdity of the president's idea, treating the body like a petri dish for untested experiments, does the heavy lifting, while his own minor lapse keeps him tethered to the audience's reality. The humor sharpens as Pitt subtly positions Fauci as the straight man in this circus, his understated delivery amplifying the lunacy of the moment. It's a study in tonal balance, the small, relatable flaw of itching to break a rule against the head-spinning notion of flooding the body with ultraviolet rays. Pitt's portrayal leans into this dissonance, crafting a Fauci who's both a voice of reason and a bemused bystander to a narrative spiraling beyond his control. The face-touching bit, with its trailing pause, feels like a sigh of resignation, not just to personal temptation, but to the larger task of corralling wild speculation into something coherent. Trump's words, meanwhile, hang as a monument to unchecked imagination, a stark foil to the scientist's grounded restraint. Pitt's genius lies in letting these threads collide without forcing the punchline, trusting the audience to feel the weight of the disconnect. It's satire that stings because it's rooted in the real tension between expertise and improvisation, played out with a wink and a weary shrug. Brad Pitt's dynamic range, from Oscar's reflections to Fauci satire and Trump rally friction, blended entertainment with urgency. He bridged cinema's past and future, called out political stagnation, and mocked crisis chaos with wit. His voice, both artful and bold, probed societal rifts. What hits you hardest? His link between Hollywood and national divides, his stand against injustice, or his Fauci caught mid-quirk. We're turning the mic to you. Did Pitt's Oscars pivot to accountability stir your own fire, or did his satirical take on muddled messaging hit a nerve? Maybe you felt the weight of rhetoric versus reality in your own corner of the world. Share your take below. We're here to dig into this together. Pitt's moments weren't just performances, they were a lens on our times. Where do you fit in that reflection? Like, subscribe, and tap the bell to fuel this journey of peeling back layers and lifting up voices like his. Thanks for being here. Catch you in the next one.